This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Friday, January the 23rd. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Matt Barron sitting in for David Williams today as the producer. He's producing the Come On With It edition. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So I want to say good morning and good luck to Team Mackenzie Mitchell representing Newfoundland and Labrador at the Scotties up in Ontario. They don't kick off their tournament until tomorrow, but the tournament, of course, kicks off today. So it's lead Stacey Curtis, second Christina Adams, third Jessica Wiseman. And, of course, they won the provincial qualifier in an absolute thriller. 10th and last rocket beating Team Locke, who just won the AUS championship representing Memorial University. So go get him. She talks about growing up as a child playing out at the Cornerbrook Curling Club. For a couple of years, she was the only girl playing in the juniors ranks. Talking about the thrill and the dream of sliding over the Scotties logo on the ice in the big arena against some of the best teams in the country. So good luck to Team Mackenzie Mitchell. All right, one Canadian is left standing at the Australian Open. Vicky Mboko, great match last night. So she gets through beating Tauman off to the fourth round. Denis Shapovalov on the men's side, he got knocked out yesterday, but go get him, Vicky Mboko. All right, random tennis note. 1983, Bjorn Borg announces his retirement. He retired at the age of 26. And at that point, he had already won 5 Wimbledon and 6 French Open titles. Imagine what he could have done. You know, look at the players now. Well into their 30s, still achieving great success. So Borg retires at 26 with 11 majors. And I had a call yesterday from a fellow who admitted that he was a big wrestling fan. And I think the conversation was about American politics. Anyway, so I saw this and it just made me laugh. So 1984, Hulk Hogan, a.k.a. Terry Jean Bollea, Hulk Hogan defeats the Iron Sheik to win the first World Wrestling Federation title at Madison Square Gardens in New York City. Became the first wrestler at the time to escape the camel clutch. All right. Good on the folks at Stephenville for opening up the Stephenville Dome, their hockey arena, to the displaced Port aux Basques teams. So they got a tournament this weekend. They've been welcomed into Stephenville. That's terrific news. The players are going to get some tickets to go to the Saturday night senior game between the Lightning and the Red Wings. So good for the folks in Stephenville. And hopefully they can get that Bruce 2 facility repaired out in Port aux Basques. All right, sticking with Stephenville for a second. And I know, the Stephenville airport conversation is dead in the water. I get it. But now the Supreme Court has granted an application to appoint an interim receiver for the airport in Stephenville. You know, when times are tough, sometimes people can fall prey to what are big, huge promises of economic boom and jobs we created and investment into the airport, bringing back passenger travel, and, of course, nothing happened. So just imagine what, could have changed here. So even inside this world, not the Stephenville Airport, there's no power on. It was cut off back last June. So shuttered, quickly deteriorating, dilapidated, and here we are. You know, what once was a possibility of even some minor investment and the creation of some jobs and bring back some passenger travel, the community went down the Carl Diamond hole, and, of course, the rest is history. A bunch of outstanding money, court filings, around $2.5 million for unpaid contracts regarding the lighting, unpaid taxes to the federal government to the tune of $820,000, and Stephenville left with nothing. I think there's property taxes owed to the town of Stephenville to the tune of $500,000 as well. So just brutal state of affairs out there. And sticking with Stephenville. You know, every now and then we get an email reminding us that there's life in this province outside the overpass, and of course there is. And we try to be absolutely mindful of it. So this is about town councils. So a story that's brewing in Stephenville with the resignations of some senior staff members. You know, a deputy mayor in Torbay has been suspended for 3 months. The entire council in Victoria was disbanded. every single one of them. No real timeline as to when there's going to be another election in Victoria. The administrator who's operating or running the town at this moment in time is a senior representative from the Department of Municipal Affairs. So yes, there are lots of council issues in different pockets of the province, and it's very helpful, and I appreciate it when people bring them to me, because it's hard for me to know that there's been a resignation of a senior staffer in Stephenville, but I do appreciate when people bring it forward. Okay, what's all this? Oh, yeah. This story, I tell you what, it has broken my heart, and I have to admit that last night it was part of my nightmare landscape. And this is the story about the big dogs roaming around and the eventual consequence, like what happened in Holyrood. So this little Havanese in his own backyard on a leash. Now the property wasn't fenced, but regardless. And then apparently this was all quite predictable. So say the residents in Holyrood, and particularly the owner of this poor little dog that was mauled to death and died in her arms. Just brutal story. Kimberly Gainey's her name. Kimberly, you're welcome to join us on the program. So they talk about the fact that these dogs have been creating problems and stoking fear for quite a long while. And then consequently, this is the end result. The rules are quite clear. You have to have your dog tethered if you're not on your own property. And I see dogs that get a little run in the park sometimes, and I'm not going to be the doggy Gestapo and be yelling at people and that kind of stuff, but come on, folks. And then this owner apparently is oblivious to what has happened here. And if you're a pet owner, you know full well, they do very quickly get your heart. They are very quickly parts of the family. And I'm not trying to be sensational here, but this is not good enough. It's just not good enough. And the fines are pitiful. So if a violation to the Act causes a fine for first offence, $300 is a typical offence, a typical fine, $1,500 for third and subsequent offences. Boy, it's simply not good enough. And here's some of the problems, sir. Like, for instance, in the town of Holyrood, they don't have a bylaw enforcement officer. They haven't had one for the last number of years. So it's one thing to have the rules on the books. It's one thing for the Act to read the way it does. But if there's no one there to enforce it, then, of course, it's meaningless, worthless. But for owners of big dogs in particular, now, yes, a little dog can give you some trouble, no question about it. But for the big dogs, and apparently and obviously, these are ill-tempered animals, and more should be done on that front, but I'm not suggesting that Holyrood all of a sudden needs to hire bylaw officers, but we've got to enforce these rules. And I would imagine pet owners, dog owners in particular this morning, because we're talking about a dead dog, will be, I think, and hopefully, nodding along. And for the big dog owners, please just do your community a favor and be mindful of them and where they are. And if they're off their property, they need to be on a leash. So there's some form of control by the owner. Anyway, that story, it was part of my nightmares last night. Unbelievable. All right, let's keep going. Big shake-up in healthcare in this province. Dr. Pat Parfrey. So, of course, he's had a pretty illustrious career as a doctor. He was brought in to be one of the co-chairs to author the Health Accord with all the subcommittee members that contributed as well. Sister Elizabeth Davis, of course, the other co-chair there. Then brought in to be a senior bureaucrat in the Department of Health. And then a year ago was offered and was named the CEO of NL Health Services. All right, a few things. He's been ousted, so says the story. Don't know exactly what might be behind that, but just a few questions that I think are looming for the current government. You can talk about the role that Dr. Parfrey's played over the years, whether or not you think this is a good thing or a bad thing. We've heard various opinions in my email inbox this morning, but with the Health Accord, very similar to the Premier's Economic Recovery Team report and the Rothschild report, these were all intended to be roadmaps. I think some work has absolutely been done on the Health Accord, but the key and the underlying sentiment of the Accord, the 10-year roadmap, was a keen focus on the social determinants of health. When we talk about healthcare in this province, most often it's about more doctors, access to primary care, and of course, all critically important. But the policy and the spend inside the social determinants of health has not followed. Certainly not to the extent with which it should. Because we talk about healthcare as very reactive, because that's what we do. We wait until we get sick, and then you need to present yourself to primary care. Whether it be an emergency room, an urgent care clinic, you're a family doctor, or whatever the case may be. But the trick and the hopes to control spending is for the social determinants of health to be adhered to. So consequently, we reduce the likelihood of you needing to go to the doctor, of needing to go to the emergency room. And we all have been talking about exactly what those social determinants have been, or are, pardon me, and what is maybe not being done to the extent it should be. But Dr. Pat Parfrey, out as the CEO of NL Health Services. Then they go on to say that the Board of Trustees is responsible for the delivery of healthcare in the province. And the person that's going to be at the helm of that now is former Cabinet Minister Ross Wiseman. It feels like a little bit of buck passing here. Now, Minister of Health and Community Services, Leila Evans, says it now gives the department, a better opportunity to deliver healthcare where it needs to be delivered. Not really sure what that means either. But the Board of Trustees, of course they play a role in the delivery of healthcare. But let's be boldly honest here. It's NL Health Services and the Department of Health Community Services. Yes, the Board of Trustees is part of the equation, but I'm not so sure how that belongs in this particular news story as per the delivery inside the system, the operations of the system. But Parfrey, out your thoughts. And it was just this week that Dr. Parfrey came forward and talked about the forecasted need in long-term care beds. And it's stark. Over the course of the next few years, we're going to have to add 30% more beds. And again, I'm going to be almost sick of it myself, but between that and government constantly and endlessly talking about the supports and the understanding of needing more opportunities for people to stay at home longer in life, but yet not much being done on that front either. But there's a lot there. You want to take it on? Let's do it. All right. I read this story, and it's from Marketplace, and they do good work. And they're talking about groceries. It comes across as maybe a bit of a revelation for the staff and the authors at Marketplace to talk about the thing that we've been talking about here for years. And that's the results from the Competition Bureau investigation. So now they're talking about it as well, and fair enough. It's property controls or real estate covenants or restrictive covenants, exclusivity clauses. Something has to change. I mean, what it basically means is that a big grocery retailer, and namely the big five, but notably Loblaw, Sobeys and Metro, if they set up shop, they have plenty of control about who else can set up shop in a certain proximity to their store. And so that includes dollar stores, gas stations, anybody that might be able to sell things that they sell. Let's knock that off. I mean, let's not pretend that if we did something on the national front, that all of a sudden they wouldn't want to open up their big grocery stores, because of course they would. Right? They have lots of advantages, even with bulk purchasing power and the authority they have over the distribution chains. But let's just stop this. Where have they done something about it in this country? Manitoba. Manitoba has intervened. They've introduced a piece of legislation called Property Controls for Grocery Stores and Supermarket Acts. It's the first time it's happened in this country. It requires grocery companies to register their property controls with the province by November of last year, or else they consider them invalid. Let's make some moves. There's got to be some federal guidance here as well. I know provincial authority is in some form or fashion sacrosanct for all provincial leaders because we want to have, our own destiny and our own control. But come on. I mean, if this can even lower the price of groceries marginally, that's way better than what we've seen with incremental costs. And at one point, just huge jumps in the cost. And look, grocery store operators will say paper-thin margins of 2.5% and what have you, and we know they make a lot of money on whether it be clothing or pharmaceuticals or their financial lines. Fair. But something's got to give. Like just yesterday, went into the grocery store and, like you, was told the total, looked down what was on the conveyor belt and thought, geez, man, that's not a lot of stuff for that $50 bill. So anyway, they're reporting the Competition Bureau results at Marketplace today, but we've long been talking about it. We have. All right, let's get to the Upper Churchill. How are we doing on the phone, Matt? I'm exhausted here this morning, so folks, you're going to have to help me out. So Premier Wakeham was speaking at the Rotary yesterday. An opportunity to be not only to offer a speech, but then members of the media a chance to ask questions. And this one is pretty strange. Carl Smith, who was the former chief financial officer at Fortis, one of the three-person negotiating team with Hydro-Quebec, which included Jennifer Williams and Dennis Mahoney. Mr. Mahoney stepped down, has not been replaced at this moment in time. But Carl Smith doesn't even know if he's still part of the negotiating team. How can that be? So we know negotiations are, for the most part, stalled. But for someone who was a big part of the negotiations in the first place, to not even know if he's still involved is bizarre. Premier Wakeham, in reaction to that question, or queries, said that he meets repeatedly with Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro and assumes that Hydro is keeping people like Carl Smith in the loop. Well, maybe not, because he still doesn't even know if he's part of all this. It does feel like this deal is just going to go by the wayside. It really does. Now, maybe I just read too much into some of these things, but That's a strange development. And then there's, mention of updates coming from the current independent review panel, the second panel. You think about it out loud. When the first panel was announced and it was going to be chaired by Dennis Brown, people were quick to say, hey, Dennis Brown has already told us his thoughts on the MOU, and he was bullish on it. And then the same thing, I think, could be said for Michael Wilson's inclusion in the second panel, because he was very clear, including on this program, that he thinks it's terrible. So feels like there's some predetermined outcomes involved at this moment in time. And yes, the Premier yesterday said he still intends on bringing the information to the people for a referendum, but it'd be nice to know if Carl Smith is going to be looped in here. If he's out, he's out. If he's in, he's in. But to not even know what's going on is weird. Then the current panel is looking for public input. And let's do some of that here on this program. We can be part of the public input to this three-person panel. The website is set up so that people have their voices heard. Okay? So let's see here. They've established a website. Can I find it? On the website, it's limited to 200 words in your submission. If you want to have a longer note sent to the panel, they have an email address. It's a simple one. It's submissions@churchillriverreview.ca. So they want to hear from the public. We can do that on this program because, of course, we can. All right, a couple of quickies before we get to you. So I think the pressure is obviously on the federal government. There has been lots of international travel and lots of conversations and agreements in principle and trade negotiations, all an important part of our future, of course. But even yesterday when the Prime Minister gave a speech in Quebec, there were some history lessons associated with it and what have you. But I think to a man, to a woman, the affordability issue, cost of living issues, they certainly dominate my concerns day in and day out because I'm like you. Everything we touch just costs so much. And our purchasing power has dwindled. So you want to take on next steps for the federal government and the aftermath of these types of Parliament reopens on Monday. So there's obviously some pressure. As much as people have appreciated some of the international work and the speech at Davos and those types of things, there's so much to be done. And you wonder whether or not the minority parliament is creeping towards majority. There's some floor-crossing rumbles that are out there, because of course there are. And that includes some Conservative members who have said that they've been approached, but I'm not so sure some of those stories hold a lot of water. But there you go. All right, so the invitation to join the made-up Board of Peace, the invitation for Prime Minister Carney to join it has been rescinded. All right, it's probably a good thing anyway. But it's an interesting conversation period because two of the co-founding members, which this is crazy town, Vladimir Putin and Benjamin Netanyahu, they had to attend the signing via Zoom. Why? Because had they set foot in Davos, they may have been arrested because they're alleged war criminals. But they're on the Board of Peace. And also see yesterday that there was rumbles from the Oval that, the talk of all this destabilization of NATO is problematic, obviously. But talking about invoking Article 5 so that NATO members would have to come to the American southern border and to fight off immigrants. Okay. And the Greenland deal that I was browbeat about yesterday, how come I'm not playing up what a great deal was struck? Well, as it turns out, there isn't a deal. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@VOCM.com. Let's have a great show to wrap up the week. So during this break, pick up the phone, speak to Matt, get in the queue and on the air. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. So several emails during the break talking about the slippery conditions out there. And of course, there are very slippery conditions in most of the province. One specific note, Buddy said he turned onto the road heading down to Placentia and right to the shoulder. And, just taking that turn, probably at a relatively respectful pace and right to the shoulder of the road. So you be careful out there. Let's begin this morning on line number one. Good morning, Ivy. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you doing?
Doing okay. How about you?
Good. There's no shortage of subjects to choose from this January.
No kidding.
I ran in the election last fall, and I always voiced the transparency and accountability concerns I had at the City of St. John's. And this week in the news, listening between your show as well as CBC and on the written articles from VOCM, alone what came out of the City of St. John's was more than I expected. I think a lot of people can say, with the finance concerns for the campaign, as well as corporate donations, self-financing, crime, overall appearance of downtown, and the upper management retiring with packages that really don't reflect what our city's current economic state can afford. At least that's my opinion. You know, everyone's entitled to theirs, I'm sure. But I wanted to bring up a new issue, and I'm not sure if you reviewed the council meeting last week, Patty, regarding public access to council to be able to speak at it.
I did see that, yes.
Yeah, so I read through it, and it kind of, as I read it, it made me double think, because I realized, wow, my certain things I was planning to speak to council about in person, I won't be able to now. And I think it is something that I wanted to bring up publicly. I wanted people to consider to see, do they think it was a good move by council to vote this through? So if you don't mind, just really quickly, I'll just let the listeners know, how to engage with your council.
Okay.
The first thing you can do is contact your councilor. You can do that via email or phone number. All their information is available on the city website. If you don't get anywhere with that and you still feel your subject is viable, you can write the city clerk, and you can also check if there's any public engagement sessions coming up on that subject. If you've done all three of those things and still feel your subject is viable and should be considered by our council, you can apply to be a delegate at one of the council meetings. So you can actually speak publicly to the entire council at the same time. And I think that's really important to have access to that. But the changes they put into it are making it so that I would say 95% of issues raised will be easily denied. And I can quickly go through them. I mean, just some of them was you will not get approval if the topic has been discussed by council in the last 12 months. So if something they've changed in the city doesn't work for you, you can't speak about it if it was in the last 12 months. If council has already given direction on it. So again, if there's direction on a subject, it's not working for you, you couldn't get anywhere with your councilor, the city clerk, or a public engagement session, you still can't speak about it publicly. If it's considered political in nature. So myself, I really wanted to speak about the way the election was run, not the outcome, Patty. I'm fine with that. Just, the fact that the lines and everything like that, people had to wait too long to vote. Most likely it'll be denied because it's political in nature, and topics that are subject of future planned city public engagement activities. So I just truly feel, Patty, that these changes are making it so that the real issues people care about can be easily screened out before they're ever heard. And I know they're trying to push your one-on-one with your councilors, which I appreciate. That is important. But there's no need to have the rules of if the topic's been discussed by council in the last 12 months. That's making it so anything that they've decided, that's it. There's no changes to it if they don't want, if you want to speak about it, your opinion is not valid, essentially, is what that rule change is saying to me. What's your opinion on it?
It's foolishness. Okay, so how elections are run and operated is not political. It's access to democratic institutions. So, that's not a partisan issue. So they can label anything they want political. If we talk about, the wind speed with where we should not be putting our garbage cans out, you can call that political too, but it's not. It's process. It's operations. So, there should be no such thing as a self-imposed clock put forward by council to tell me what and when I can talk about something.
And that's the thing. You can talk about it publicly online and things like that on your radio show. Yeah. But what my concern is that I want to speak to the entire council at the same moment, because if I speak to one councilor and that councilor personally does not agree, the whole point of democracy is so that, I can speak to them all at once and they can hear the same words out of my mouth and make their own opinions without it going down the telephone line. We're not playing the telephone game here. And we should truly have the option to speak at a council meeting without these restrictions. And I feel like it's kind of, with all the other stuff going on at the city, this has been really swept under the rug. And after in the fall, I pushed Mayor Breen on the fact that there's very little debate happening in the city council meetings, the public ones, because I felt the majority of the debates happening behind closed doors. And he pushed back, which is fair, and he said he did not agree with that. So I assumed this year we were going to see a lot more debate, a lot more transparency. But these rule changes, I think it's just shutting us out even more, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the need for some in-camera meetings. It makes sense. When there's human resources issues, no one wants their laundry aired in public. I understand those types of things. There can be some contractual issues where there's potentially some commercial sensitivities. I get that too. But we've got to be a little more scrutinizing of what they deem to be required in-camera conversations. And access to the ability for a citizen to speak to council should be a part of the ongoing process, even if it's uncomfortable for the councillors. Because when you throw your hat in the ring and you eventually, if you're lucky enough, you get elected, it comes with uncomfortable circumstances. It's not a parade. It's hard work. And hard work comes with being confronted by citizens with their concerns at their time, on their timeline.
I 100% agree. And I miss, those public debates. I feel like that's how we come to decisions that truly reflect a diverse council group. But when we're doing it behind closed doors, you can very easily be swayed to vote a certain way, and you can request access to information for these closed doors meetings, but the majority of them come back completely redacted, just, blacked out, just like, down in the States, you see the Epstein files, 90% of it was blacked out. Well, when you ATIP those council meetings, the private ones, that's what you're getting. You're getting blacked out, redacted things. And I understand, like you said, some of the time it's because it could be a court proceeding, an HR item. But why is there no debate happening at all in the public then? Is that all we're voting on? Is these matters that are HR related? No, there's lots of other things. So I don't know. I just wanted to bring it to the public's attention that to be able how to access your councillors. And if you want to speak publicly, there is new restrictions and you're going to have to, play the game. Make sure you try to speak to your councillor first, try the city clerk, then you need to apply and make sure you follow the rules. It cannot be a subject that's been spoken about by council in the last 12 months, which is, I don't agree.
It's just an arbitrary timeline. Ivy, really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for doing it.
You have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, let's get a break in. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the dismissal, I suppose, of Dr. Pat Parfrey at the helm of NL Health Services. Then whatever you want to talk about, don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
And welcome back. Let's go line number 2. Mike, you're on the air. Hello? Mike on 2? See if I can get that going. Okay, now I got you. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. Patty, I was dismayed this morning when I heard about the changes to the CEO. Not for the point that Pat Parfrey is gone, but the appointment of Ron Johnson as the interim CEO. Ron Johnson was one of the instigators of getting the Compass Group in there. He was one of the ones who signed a confidential contract with the Compass Group, and he put his name onto it. I had meetings with him onto it. We went over the contract and pointed out all the discrepancies and everything what shouldn't be in there. And he was in the power all these years to do something about the Compass Group and the unfair. Well, there's 100 things into that contract that is illegal, and it's an illegal contract that he signed. His words after we were finished was, he smiled at me and said, "There's not much into it for the Newfoundland government, is it, or people in Newfoundland?" And to me, you got a total disregard for the healthcare system in Newfoundland, even though he's been there for almost an eternity. But, to put him there now in charge of this stuff where he knows all the scandals of the Compass Group, he knows the contract now because he was forced to read it, but he signed it before he read it, which makes the contract illegal. And to put this man there now, I think, is a very big mistake. Like, we've got a lot of problems in the CEOs, the higher ups in our government, the bureaucrats, and these are the people we replaced. not by the people who have helped organize the loss of $1 billion to our healthcare system. All over these years, he's known everything that's going on with the Compass Group. He's helping them out. And as far as I'm concerned, he's got to come on and make it public. Do he support the Compass Group running Eastern Health, or Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services now? I mean to say, he's got to be held accountable for his past actions in order to be able to proceed with the future, because the future got to take the Compass out of the healthcare offices and dominating and doing everything only for the benefit of the Compass Group, and to make the positions like Ron Johnson got easy for them. They got nothing to do. They got nobody to answer to. But he's going to have to answer to the people of this province and to the government of why he has supported and done everything to keep the Compass Group in charge of Eastern Health. And he's the one that knows probably more about it than everybody else. He should know more about the contract because, like I said, he signed one, and I've got a copy of it with his signature signed to it. And it was secret and confidential. And now to put him in charge of as the CEO, I think that's a big, big mistake by the PC government. And, you know, I'm thoroughly, definitely against it. That, you know, the only way that I would support this, if he comes out and says that we've got to do something about the Compass Group contracts, and he is against it. And he has to do it publicly, because this is destroying our health care. Now we got one of the people who orchestrated the downfall and created a lot of the problems in our healthcare system now in charge of it. I don't know where it's going to go to from here, but if he don't change his ways and past practice with what he's been doing, our healthcare system is in a horrible, horrible situation that, you know, we're just going to be overrun by the Compass Group. And we are now. So, anyway, that's my spiel.
And I appreciate your time, Mike. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Yeah, since the story has broke and since I spoke to it off the top of the program today regarding Dr. Parfrey being removed as the CEO of NL Health Services, I think the best question that's being posed to me so far is, why? I mean, it's a pretty good one. There's assertions that, Parfrey, like him or loathe him, he says what's on his mind, right? And if this is items regarding pointing out the obviously glaring shortcomings in the system, acknowledging them, trying to talk about some pathway to close them, I'm sure that's, I've used the word uncomfortable a few times this morning. I'm sure that's uncomfortable to hear. And now, is it about things like rural and remote access? Because, maybe that's what Leila Evans is referring to. It was about how and where to deliver health care, because there was part of the health accord did indeed talk about what access to primary care and others, whether it be diagnostic services or surgeries or OBGYN departments. There's some reference to those types of things in the health accord. So when people ask me, why was he fired? I don't know, but that's a good question. Let's go to line number 3. Ashley, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty. Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, awesome. I'm calling from O'Donnell High School. I'm a teacher there, and we are putting off a show at the Arts and Culture Center in February. We're doing Greece. And I was hoping to speak with you just to kind of get the word out and hopefully increase our ticket sales a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about it. Where do you want to start?
Okay, so we're a high school, so our students have been, we did some auditions back in September, and they've been rehearsing really diligently ever since. At this point, they're really starting to sound and look like professionals, which is really great to see, especially when you see them coming into the building at, 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, when I'm sure, that's not their typical schedule for teenagers. So it's very heartwarming to see all the effort and dedication that they put in. So they are, we only have a couple of weeks left. We're going to be moving into the Arts and Culture Center the first week of February, and our show is the 12th, 13th, and 14th. So it's a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night at 7 p.m.
To this day, I freely admit I loved Grease, not only the film, but the musical, and one of the best soundtracks in film history for me, if you like that era of rock and roll.
Oh, my God. it's in everybody's head. Everybody has their own song that, is one that they can't get out of their head since we started, 4 months ago. And it's just, I'm sure it'll continue on right into March and April, long after our show is over.
Yeah, I mean, that movie was tailor-made to be on the stage.
100%. So O'Donnell did Grease in 1998, long before I was a teacher there, and we do a show every 2 years. So in 2024 we did Shrek, and we're kind of talking about this time, and kids were suggesting a couple of different things, and that was, they're only 15, 16, 17 years old, but Grease is something that they really wanted to do, which I think was awesome. So we happily jumped on board, and so it's coming up in about 3 weeks' time at the Arts and Culture Center.
I'd rather play Danny Zuko than an ogre.
Yeah, fair enough.
Personally. So, I mean, just people think about it. They buy a ticket, they go see it. They realize there's some work that goes into it because, of course, it's a massive production. But just paint us a picture about just how big an effort it is, an undertaking for a high school to put off something like this.
Oh, my gosh, it's such a huge deal. So at the school level, I'm serving the role as producer, and my colleague, our music teacher, she's a musical director, of course, and we have an in-house stage manager. And then we have, my colleague in the shop is creating with his students, building our set, our superstructure. And then, the art director is getting everything painted. It's just so many different people, different types of involvement. We have someone else, seeking out sponsors for the program, and someone else making the program. It's just so many hands involved at our level, like as staff. We hired a director and a choreographer, so it's quite professional. And of course, just the undertaking of renting out the Arts and Culture Center and everything that comes with that. It's a very big production, and we are so looking forward to, seeing them on stage and seeing all their hard work finally pay off.
I think it's brilliant. Any favorite characters in the production? Not by student, but by...
Yeah, so, the T-Birds and the Pink Ladies, we're seeing the relationships build between them on and off stage, and it's really, it's quite funny. Just seeing, because not everyone was friends when they auditioned for the show, right? But when you spend 3 and 4 lunchtimes a week and every Saturday together, you're seeing those friendships form. So those relationships are really sweet. Patty is probably my favorite character. Just the way she embraces her cheerleader role, it's quite funny. It's quite comical.
Yeah, Patty Simcox, is that her name?
Patty Simcox, yes. Yeah. So she's been twirling her batons in practice now, so she's getting really good at it.
And even some of the lines from the movie still stick out of my head. Like, one of my favorites is, a hickey from Kanicki's like a Hallmark card.
Absolutely, yes.
Great stuff. And last one, any favorite tunes?
I really love those Magic Changes. That's my favorite. But they're all really good. They did a really great in rehearsal last weekend. They did Hand Jive, and it was really great. Just all the singing and dancing all together looks really wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, Shana Na, Board the Hand Jive, love that tune. You're the one that I want. I think that's my favorite. Really great to have you on, Ashley. Break a leg.
Thank you so much. So just one last time, February 12th, 13th, 14th at the Arts and Culture Center, and the tickets are $38. You can get them at their box office. Fantastic
stuff. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Yeah, a hickey from Kanicki's like a Hallmark card. Let's get a break. When we come back, there's a 30-year experienced truck driver who wants to talk about driving on our highways. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Jamie. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Fantastic. Welcome to the show.
I don't know if it's concerns or if I want to rant or whatever. I've been driving trucks in Newfoundland now for the past 30 years. And, Patty, this winter has been the worst that I've ever witnessed in my driving career. Like, snow clearing when I started out was 24-hour operation, and I see it went back to 12 hours. And if it was stormy, you'd have a highway flyer meet come out in the middle of the day or whatever. But this year, Patty, like I've got pictures on my phone of like 11:30 in the morning, and we're traveling up the highway, and there's been one pass made. You got 2 lanes of traffic and it's snow covered. You don't know if you're in your lane, you're in oncoming traffic lane, or whatever. And the roads are completely snow covered in the middle of the day. Let alone the Minister of Transportation getting on the news talking about, oh, we're right around the corner from this 24-hour snow clearing, implementing that again. They can't even get the snow clearing in the daytime right. And it's a safety issue, Patty.
No, of course it is. Absolutely.
Like, you get tell of accidents every day of people running into tractor trailer and a vehicle involved in another accident. It's not the truck's fault. It's not the car's fault. It's a combination of a lot of things, Patty. It's like we're regulated that much now that in this industry it's not even worthwhile being out here no more. With the cancellation of the ferries, this ELOC system that the government put in place, like, years ago, if you wanted to stop and have a bite to eat, you'd stop. You talk to your buddy for a minute, and you travel on. Right now, you're fighting the clock every day just to try to get to where you got to go or try to get home or whatnot. Like, and to do it on a road that's not even snow cleared, in the middle of the day, that's a bit much, Patty.
I totally understand. Jamie, as a 30-year veteran and saying that the conditions are terrible now, do you have any thoughts or insights as to just how frequently we're hearing about transport trucks or tractor trailers being involved in collisions on the highway? Any thoughts on that? Because it seems to be pretty common this winter.
First of all, Patty, trucks are bigger than cars and they take up more volume on the road. So if I'm traveling up, just say a 3-lane highway where I got a passing lane, and I don't know if I'm in the passing lane or if I'm divided into 2 lanes, you got a car or a string of traffic coming behind you, and they obviously want to pass. So the first chance they get with no oncoming traffic, there they go. They're out around you. Stuff coming your way, they got to get in their own lane again. Or you're traveling up the road and it's beautiful like it is right now where I'm at. You go around a corner and the slow lane, I'll call it, hasn't been plowed yet. So now you're doing 90 to 100 kilometers an hour, and you'll come around a turn, and the road is completely snow covered in your lane. It's just hazardous.
Yeah. So, I mean, just a couple of thoughts on that, because, you know, when I was hearing these stories, you know, it was back-to-back days on the highway, there was a transport truck involved. And, you know, some people say, well, boy, the transport truck drivers just got to be more careful. Then I had to look around, and in Ontario, the Ontario Police Force, the OPP, they had an investigation of this, and they said that 86% of the collisions were the cause of the passenger vehicle traffic, not the truck drivers themselves.
Yeah, well, I'm not here to play the blame game, Patty,
No.
And you're right with what you're saying. But, like, there's a combination of a lot of things. Like, people need to slow down in general. Snow means slow, but, like, when you got the highway depots with the equipment parked in there, and I'm not here to cut those guys and girls off, but you take, like, for instance, last week, it was a beautiful, clear day, 3 degrees, and I met a plow truck coming towards me, dry roads, and he was spreading salt. And 2 days later, at like 11 o'clock in the morning, I'm trying to get east of Bishop Falls, and I traveled from Bishop Falls all the way to Glovertown Overpass and never met a flyer. So I don't know if you blame four-wheelers, the commercial drivers. You hear guys get on there, oh, it's the foreigners. It's not all foreigners. It's not all cars. There's a combination of a lot of things, and it's not all government, but we as a province, we need to get better with the snow clearing. Like, they're talking about 24 hours. They can't even get it right in the daytime.
Yeah, I mean, when you see the salt truck spreading salt when there's absolutely no need, no ice to manage, it's even worse sometimes when I see the blades down and the sparks flying because there's nothing to plow.
Exactly. It's aggravating. Okay, so you can see those people out in the middle of the day and a beautiful, clear day. So where are those same people when you need them? Like, you know, I know it's crazy, Patty. And this is the worst I've seen it in the whole time I've been driving. And it's not liberal government. It's not the PC government. It's just, I don't know. I don't know where the answer lies, but I've after emailing Premier Wakeham. I'm after phoning the government building 4 or 5 times. Like, I got pictures with time stamped the time on my phone of those incidents, and I can't get nobody to call me back. And it's like, they say there's no price on safety. So where do you draw the line on safety? Do we all park when it snows?
Yeah.
Do we stay home? I don't know.
Good question. While we got you, before I get to the news, you did mention the ferry system. So they're adding another vessel, but the Leif Erikson might be going by the wayside. Now, the new vessel is 20% increased capacity over the Leif Erikson, but you might not see an actual extra vessel, and it won't even be ready for this year. So that in combination with the the passenger rate being cut in half, so we'll probably see more passenger traffic. What do you think the future looks like at Marine Atlantic, given those two things?
Well, Paddy, Marine Atlantic is his own worst enemy as far as I'm concerned. They had the Joseph Clare Smallwood and the Caribou on. That's the boats that were on when I started out in this industry. And I'm telling you right now, when they didn't sail, you didn't want to be traveling anyway. We got those new ferries here now, the Alasunia and the Blue Petits and whatnot. And I'll call them, for lack of a better term, they're like con boats. It don't matter how many people they can hold. If they don't sail in the wind, there's not much good.
Yeah, when I heard the story that they were adding that new 5-year lease vessel, I thought, okay, bit of relief coming for passengers and commercial traffic. But at the exact same time, at the bottom of the story was the Leif Erikson's been on the water since 2001 and might be taken off the service, so not a whole lot of increased capacity. Anything else while we have you this morning, Jamie?
No, Patty. I just appreciate the time to get on there and rant, and then I appreciate you taking my call.
I appreciate your time. Be safe out there. Good luck.
Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. There you go. Some of my faves, the long-time listener, first-time caller. It's good for the heart. All right. And you never know what's going to get the biggest reaction so far this morning. Grease, the musical. I go down the folks at O'Donnell. And, someone also said, why is that news? Well, it is for the people who are involved. It is for people that might want to go see it. And plus, sometimes a little bit of lightheartedness and things that aren't so super serious and super complicated and doomy and gloomy. I think it's a welcome relief, and I think other people do as well. So let's check in on the Twitter before we get to the news. Joe's going to be there after we come back, talk about seniors. Let's see here. We're VOCM Up Online. You can follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Oh, one of the more recent tweets is, and it simply says, more problems with AI. It's one thing for what we talk about in the education system and whatever the case may be. And this story is about images being altered by artificial intelligence by governments, and in this case, the American government, regarding the conduct of ICE agents on the streets, specifically in Minneapolis. Boy, what are we going to do? I mean, the government can legislate and put some restrictions in place regarding AI and the need for water stamps and what have you. But if we can't trust them to not use it themselves to further their own political wants, it's pathetic. And there's no end in sight. And you're going to see more and more of it. And it's going to be more and more confusing and more damaging to just understanding exactly what's going on and who's responsible. Let's get a break for the news. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 1. Carl, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Hi, Carl.
Thanks for letting me into your world there. I know you're a busy fella, and there's an awful lot of very tenuous, serious issues on the go. I just wanted to bring yourself and some of your listeners up to status, I guess, on the situation down here on the Burin Peninsula. I talked to you one time before, a couple of times, about the deteriorating situation at the Fortune Head Ecological Reserve. That situation is not getting any better. Like most things, gets worse with time. To bring your listeners up to square, if you want, I'll just give you a quick update.
Yeah, please do. I know what we're talking about. You paint the picture, though. We're talking about what was an old landfill, what's become of it. So go ahead and tell us what we're talking about.
Okay, so the area outside of Fortune on the coast was used by the town of Fortune as a dump site for domestic garbage for 30 or 40 years. In the 1970s and 80s, geologists at the university specifically, but other places, took interest in the area because of a local find of geological significance. Government of Newfoundland, in response to this discovery, decided to make this area into an ecological reserve under the protection of the Department of the Environment, the province of Newfoundland. When they looked at the site was a mess, and the garbage dump is only probably a couple of 100 meters from this significant geological discovery. So the government of today remediated the land, covered up the garbage with fill material, local material, cost of $50,000, and the government accepted or passed legislation to take claim to this piece of land under the jurisdiction of the Department of the Environment. In time, unfortunately, the material that was placed over the garbage washed away through natural erosion and wind, etc., and garbage began to expose itself up through the material. The first reference is in 2003 in government reports, but I'd suggest it was probably going on before that. But either way, the government has been discussing this since 2003 with very little action, no action here on the site. But I'm happy to report and very appreciative to the government for getting an engineering company to come down and do a site assessment in May of 2025, last year. That site assessment gives the government the recommendations on how to remediate this thing and put it back in line with the laws of the land. Obviously, I would say it's illegal to have a piece of property that's spewing garbage into the ocean every day. So this report is with the government today. The last government showed little interest, but at times we did get some participation. And my fear is that with the change of government, we got a whole new round of players. My messages and phone calls are getting ignored, which is no big deal, but that's par for the course. And budget 2026 is being discussed today. So I would hope, or I would encourage anybody who's aware of the site on the Burin Peninsula or outside the Burin Peninsula to send a message to the email budget 2026 at gov.nl.ca with the words, only the words, fix fortune now, fix fortune ahead. This is an embarrassment in many levels, but besides embarrassment, obviously the garbage is going down into the ocean. Just meters from where the ocean is, there's lobster pots and fishing gear, and our neighbors in St. Pierre are just a couple of miles away. The whole thing is an unfortunate legacy of the past, but like everything, we got to manage what we've got in front of us today and every day. Domestic garbage falls down into the Atlantic Ocean under the management of the provincial government, and right over a couple of 100 yards away, there's a facility owned by the government of Canada, a lighthouse and a Coast Guard station. So both these governments have been turning a blind eye to this for decades.
I can attest to it. You've sent me some photographs of exactly what we're talking about this morning, and it's crystal clear that whatever is there in that old landfill is sliding into the ocean. And, we're talking about governments who've been, lecturing us about environmental standards and all these things for quite a long time, and understandably so. Protecting the environment, we only get one chance to do it right. But to leave this unattended to just doesn't even make any sense. And it doesn't look like it's a big monumental effort required to clean it up either. Now, the pictures were from quite a long distance, so I might be exaggerating how simple it might be, but certainly it needs to be done. It needed to be done a decade ago.
But like many things, I can say myself, I'm a 65-year-old man. When I was a younger fella, take something, throw it over the side of the ocean, into the ocean. That was what was done. We've grown as Newfoundlanders. We've grown as Canadians and in the world. The environmental awareness in the world, and Newfoundland is not in the back seat. Newfoundlanders, in my experience, are very worldly, very aware of the environment. I've worked on many different construction projects, had environmental concerns where it was handled professionally and handled well and handled within the requirements of the government of Canada and within the requirements of the government of Newfoundland. But both these entities, and I understand, nobody wants to go back and clean up someone else's mess, but as a society, we have certain standards and values, and one of the values is to look out to the environment. Both problems that are created today, government, every year they foster and support kid litter programs to ensure that the children go pick up litter around their school gardens and stuff. But governments refuse to deal with this. Now, I'm hopeful that the government has an engineering report with the necessary recommendations, and of course recommendations to meet the law of the land. Engineering is done that way, and I hope that the government, the new minister is Mr. Chris Tibbs, I believe, and Minister Tibbs obviously got lots on his plate, but this is a hangover from the past. Like I say, I'm very appreciative that the engineering work is done. I'm sure that it was expensive to do those types of things and get an engineering company to leave the Conference of St. John's and come down here on the Burin Peninsula. I'm sure it was costly, but we need to build on this. We need to continue this. And for many different advantages, the tourism sector is a big deal down here on the Burin Peninsula and in the province. Huge contribution to the local economy. But here on the Burin Peninsula, we got it's a hard thing to describe as in a participant in the tourism of the Burin Peninsula who's not really playing the game. And that person, or that entity, I should say, is the provincial government. They watch this garbage fall down into the ocean. The tourists going back and forth to St. Pierre sail right by this place. The tourists of the Burin Peninsula, the tourists visiting the Burin Peninsula have made comments online and otherwise describing this as a mess. I've personally had discussions with tourists from Saskatchewan and from Ontario and an American lady who were quite upset at the way that Newfoundlanders treat the environment. I don't think this has much to do with Newfoundlanders. It's to do with the government and the bureaucracy. These beautiful people with the government that I've been speaking to, many of them are outraged, but obviously they work within a system, and the system grinds very slowly. So again, I'm going to take the next couple of months or next couple of weeks, try to push out a message to get people to send a message to budget 2026 at gov.nl.ca and just remind the government, fix Fortune Head.
Carl, I'm glad you put it back on the front burner, and I appreciate your time this morning.
Listen, I really appreciate it, Patty, and your service here is amazing. Access to government, otherwise through email and through phone calls, don't seem to work. And I hope and pray that someone is out there listening, taking note, and remember that Fortune Head is a very unique ecological reserve. It has wonderful features, but unfortunately, it has this legacy from decades ago, and it needs to be dealt with. Thank you for your time, and you have a great day.
The same to you, Carl. Thanks a lot. All right, bye-bye.
Oliver.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen those pictures. It's ridiculous. I mean, the tourism angle is one, but it's simply just the environmental angle is key. And, just brings to mind, I wonder what the status is for funding and operation at the Clean Harbours Initiative. Sean Bath and his buddies. They've done some pretty important work, too. So I believe it was established back in 2018. And their goal, their mission was to clean up coastal waters and in their harbours. So, I mean, at one point, I think they'd hauled some 200,000 pounds of trash out of the bays. So whether it be tires or other old grout or ghost gears a little further afield, well, that's abandoned fishing gear. So I wonder how they're doing these days in their plans for the upcoming cleanup. There's also an operation down in Petty Harbour called the Clean Currents Initiative, and they do important work. But for the government, I mean, Minister Tibbs or otherwise, all you need to do is see the pictures. And it's pretty obvious that there's a cleanup required, and long has been the case. Let's get a break, and when we come back, Joyce, you're next. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back. Let's roll. Line number 2. Joyce, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty, me boy. How are you?
Not too bad, I suppose. How about you?
Okay. Well, very stressed. I'm having a lot of trouble with my phone company. I've tried everything under the sun to get something done. I've had promises after promises, that they come and fix it. It's the wiring outside the house, and they don't show up. They don't phone. And when one man phoned me one morning, he said, we'll be there because I've been waiting forever. He said, we'll be there between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning. You'll be our first customer to be repaired. Never showed up, never called. I called them long distance because all these people are out of town that you talk to. They don't live here. They're from Ontario, I believe, and get nowhere with them. Can't get any management to talk to. And this guy, then when he said he'd be there between 8 and 9, I phoned. Then it was 3 o'clock that day, didn't show up. Then, it's going to be 3:30, didn't show up. Didn't get any calls. It's very stressful. All my phones are down. If I didn't have the flip phone, I'd have no communication with anybody about a flip phone. So, and it's very stressful, very stressful.
So what exactly is the problem that's led you to relying on a flip phone?
I bought the flip phone. I had the problems, but I didn't call about it. I thought it might be my phones, but it's not. It's from the outside of the house, the wiring to the pole. And they're supposed to come and check it out and fix it, and they haven't. All my phones are working, but it's all buzzing noise. I have call display. Nobody can phone in on these phones, even though they're working that way, but nothing comes through, and I can't call out on any of my phones.
Yeah. Dealing with the telecom companies can be a handful, to say the very least. Now, I will say my provider, we were having extensive problems with our television service or cable service or fiber optic or whatever the right word is, and they were pretty helpful there. Then we ran into an issue, a technical issue with internet access, and man, oh man, I was banging my head against the wall for a whole week trying to get it figured out.
Well, you know what? I got mine fixed yesterday. And they gave me all kinds of, I don't know if you call it modems and towers, and they went above and beyond. The young man that came here, he's from Nova Scotia, and he's here helping out for internet. He was wonderful, I got to say. I even gave him a chocolate bar before he left. But anyway, Patty, can I say the name of this company?
Sure, why not?
Bell Alliance.
Fair enough.
And I need to talk to management. I mean, this has to be fixed. I'm not behind on my bills. I even pay when I don't need to pay just to get ahead of the game, right? And, I mean, it's very stressful. I just had a pacemaker put in October, and I was stressed enough about that. I was in the hospital up here for 3 weeks plus waiting to get air ambulance to St. John's. I thought I was going to die. And it was very stressful. And there's no end to it. There's just no end to it. I'm hoping management will phone you so I can get something done. And the guy that's supposed to be repair the phones, he shouldn't have the job. He should be out of a job, as far as I'm concerned.
Hopefully you get the help you need ASAP, Joyce. Fingers crossed.
Anyway, I'd give my phone number, but you might get a lot of bogus calls. So the guy there has my number. And if management would call, it would be wonderful. I need to talk to somebody about this because nothing's going to get done if I don't. And Patty, something else. I'd like to give a bouquet to the people at the hospital in St. John's. They went above and beyond when it came to my health. They did. They couldn't do enough. The room, they were always in there, always wanting to know, do you need anything? Do you this? Do you that? And the patients that were in my room were wonderful. We had a good laugh, right? But anyway, they were great down there, I got to say. And it's not a nice operation. You have to stay awake for it, right? So, yeah. But, Patty, I need to bring something up. The new hospital here in Corner Brook, when you're a patient in there, you don't even get a serviette, not one shitty serviette to wipe your mouth with. for the patients that are in there eating. Nothing. I mean, this is a new hospital. They should be ashamed. And I guess as government that's in charge of it, shame on you. And I had to get everything brought in that I needed, or else you'd have to wipe him out with toilet paper or a hand towel, one of those rough hand towels. And most of the nurses and doctors were great up there, I got to say. I wouldn't have survived. I ordered all the tests myself through my doctor because I'm 78 years old, and every year you have to get your blood work done and make sure you're good for driving and your mind and whatever, right? So anyways, I ordered tests for my lungs, my heart, and, oh, my God, there was something else. Anyways, because I smoke about a pack a day, easy. So I thought, well, if I got cancer, I want to know. I'm not the type don't want to know. So anyways, I got my blood work done. Then I ordered all those tests. They did my lungs. They come out amazing. Nothing wrong with them. They were going to put a belt on me to monitor my heart. And when I got in the hospital and they did the grafts, the nurse said, just a moment. She said, I'll be back. And she come back and she said, I got a doctor from internal medicine. He'll be in to see you in a couple of minutes. And he come in and he said, you're not going anywhere. You got to stay here. You could go out in the parking lot and die. He said, that's how bad your heart is, right? Well, so very stressful. And 3 weeks, and I got to say, Air Ambulance was amazing. The ones that took me to St. John's, they were amazing. I can't say enough about them. They were fantastic.
I'm glad that's the case. I'm glad you got some help. Anything else quickly, Joyce, before I have to go?
Yes, I'd like to bring up one more thing about those poor animals that were left out in the cold and nothing done about it. And the Liberals, when they were in, oh, you're getting a $50,000 fine, or you're getting this, they did diddly squat. And those poor animals, if they're still out there, left out in the cold and all the snowstorms, rain, freezing rain and wind, they must be all dead by now, because the police went there and didn't see a thing wrong with it. And I think shame on you, shame on everybody that's involved that doesn't want to help these poor animals, and lock that lunatic that got them in jail, because that's where he belongs. And you don't hear anything about the cats that were abused and cut up and everything else. And it's terrible what's going on. Something needs to be done.
No doubt. Appreciate the time, Joyce. Take good care.
How's your puppy dog?
Doing great. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Patty,
You're
for
welcome,
letting
Joyce.
me spew it out. Thank you.
No
Bye.
problem at all. Bye-bye. A couple of quick updates. So apparently the two big dogs in Holyrood that mauled that little puppy to death, they're now tethered. That's an update coming from someone who drove by that particular home this morning, so that's a good thing. Then there's, I can't remember the name of the community in an email we got today, and I've been bombarded with these types of uncared for and large breed roaming dog emails. Just unbelievable. There's another circumstance where this lady lives next door. There's a couple of senior citizens live next door, and they've got two big dogs. Now, they're inside a fenced yard, but they're outside all day, all night, every day. When called, they called the police about it, and the police said, well, they're working dogs. What does that mean? They're working dogs. There's like a working dog group if you're watching Westminster, but what does that have to do with anything? So the cops told that person that because these dogs can go in and out of the shed, so have that form of shelter, and there's water out there, then there's nothing else they can do. Man, what was it, like minus 25 with the wind chill the other night? I mean, it's unbelievable. And on that front, I mean, look at some of the weather maps across the country today, the polar vortex that's sitting over so many communities. They're talking about wind chills in certain parts of the country, and it's eventually going to make its way to Atlantic Canada. I don't know if it's going to make its way all the way to us, but they're looking at temperatures that are going to be hard to break minus 25. They're talking about wind chill in certain parts of the country, minus 40 to minus 50. Ah, man, brutal. Also, quick mention, the urgent care clinic. We've given out the numbers. It's starting this past Tuesday. You can call and make an appointment. You know, it's always been a walk-in service, but now you can make an appointment as well. So the number, once again, is 1-855-709-8559. I get a lot of feedback saying, you know, I tried to call and I'm just getting some sort of error message. they only start taking the bookings at 11 a.m. So until you have to wait till 11 to actually be able to make a booking on that appointment line. All right, let's get a break in. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 2. Tom, you're on the air.
Hello, Patty.
Hi there.
Hi, Ben. You mentioned about, I'm calling from Cornerbrook, by the way. I want that to be known for sure. You mentioned about solid application and plowing when, it's not required.
Yes, sir.
In your city for snow clearing. Practice here in Cornerbrook is so wasteful, and in fact, it's actually dangerous. They'll take a well-plowed road with a hard, compact snow surface. You might remember those from the 70s and 80s.
Yep.
With good traction and adequate stopping distance. They will then apply the salt sand mix, and if it's cold, it'll turn it into this slippery, brown, sugary mess. Or if it's warm or sunny, it'll turn into this slippery, slushy mess, just from the application of the salt and sand mix. Both these conditions, this brown, sugary stuff and the slushy stuff, makes driving conditions so very hazardous. Gets caught up around your wheel wells or, prematurely rusting your vehicle. We'll take a 4-lane road, such as in Cornerbrook, our Lower O'Connell Drive area, down by Tim Hortons. It'll turn that 4-lane road into a 2-lane road. This is due to everybody driving in the same track to avoid all this sugary mess or this slushy mess, leaving the center lanes usable only at your own risk due to the conditions. This sugary mess eventually will be plowed into your driveway, and it's so dense you can't move it with a snowblower or you break pins. The slushy mess splashes pedestrians, freezes through your wheel wells as well, and in big trucks, they'll drop huge chunks of ice, which gets caught up under smaller vehicles. This slushy mess, of course, freezes into ice overnight. You can't move that from your driveway in the morning when you got to be at work at 8 o'clock. And I've seen salt and sand applications here in Cornerbrook immediately prior to plowing. It's crazy. I've seen salt applications to bare pavement. And I once asked the truck driver, why are you putting salt and sand on bare pavement and the sun is shining and there's no precipitation? And his response was, because my boss told me to. So there's no autonomy there. They're just robots. I guess they're just kicked out of the depot to give them something to do, staring at their phones. 2 nights ago, we had about 2 or 3 inches of snow. Plowed to the road twice. It's such a waste of funds.
Yeah, it's frustrating when we hear these types of things. You add that to some of the news we've heard about the expense, the increase in road work itself, and then to know that we're probably spending money we don't need to when the conditions don't require ice management. They don't require snow plowing. And, of course, you live in a much different set of circumstances regarding your winter road conditions versus what we deal with here in town, because basically this is just slush-bound slop for the most part around St. John's versus what the kind of snowfall and conditions you get in Cornerbrook. So I completely understand the frustration.
Okay, this slushy, wet stuff that accumulates on your roads, what happens to that? It seeps down under the pavement. It freezes. It heaves up the pavement. The plow follows up behind that, rips the pavement up. There's so many potholes and destruction here in Cornerbrook. It is ridiculous.
Same thing around here.
Funds.
Yeah.
Well, and to me, it seems to me like we must have 1,000 city employees here. You'll see 6 of them gathered around one pothole, staring down into it, to decide that, okay, let's throw an orange garbage bag full of sand in this, and that'll take care of it. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that move, every time I see it, I just roll my eyes like, really? That's the solution we've come up with? An orange bag of sand?
Yeah, or they'll put up a sign, which takes them just as long to put a sign up saying rough road ahead. It takes them just as long to put up a sign as it does to fix their road.
Yeah, the seasons get tighter. I mean, the government has done some proactive things insofar as early tenders and 5-year roadmaps with some wiggle room, of course, when there's a problem that just pops up out of nowhere. But look, I'm just going to go back to the explosion in costs since 2019, 85% up. You think about it, was it some 12, 13,000 kilometers worth of road here, and every nook and cranny wants road work done, whether we talk about municipal work and or highway, byway work. We're going to get fewer kilometers every single year because of the unbelievable increase in cost. And then you talk about the management factoring in 24/7 and whether or not that ever becomes a thing and whether it expands from the 14 routes they chose initially. So we've got ourselves a brewing problem with roads. Well, I guess we always have.
Absolutely. Yeah, in Cornbrook, it's just ridiculous how they turn the roads in front from, like I said, a great driving surface to this slushy, slimy, slippery mess that you can't drive on. It's dangerous. Anyway, I'm going to go on Facebook and drop some of that on there.
Fair enough,
So,
Tom.
one more thing before I go.
Okay.
The dog situations, and I think I've texted you before or emailed you before on this, I would sooner walk through the interior of Newfoundland without a weapon than walk to any city, town, or community without a weapon, you know? I don't trust any dogs. I don't care the size of them, big or small. I don't trust any dogs. I feel more comfortable in the interior of Newfoundland without a weapon than I would walking on any city streets.
Yeah, I mean, my neighborhood is full of dogs, and I think that's great. You might have different perspective on dogs, but seeing a big dog off leash, I think, unsettles a lot of people. And you mentioned small dogs too, and yes, small dogs can do some damage, but compare my little miniature poodle to some of the bigger, large breed dogs. I think the damage that could be inflicted is a different magnitude or scale. But I hear you, and it's unbelievable to me how many dog-related emails I've gotten in the last 2 weeks. Like, it's non-stop. And it needn't be the way. Put your dog on a leash. That's pretty fundamental stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure why everybody went out and got a dog during COVID. I don't see the relationship there at all.
Have you ever had a dog?
My family had dogs, and I hated every one of them.
Really? See, I love my little dog. I'm looking forward to going home and seeing him.
Jesus, constantly barking at everything. Someone knocks on the door. Someone walks up the road. It's just so disturbing.
Yeah, we don't get, knock on wood, he's not a big barker, and that is really good thing, because I'd be drove nuts if he was a yappy little dog. But so far, so good. Little growl every now and then at whatever spooks him, but so far he's a bit of a jumper, not a barker.
Yeah, I don't appreciate that, walking into someone's house and their dog jumps up on me either.
Well, Tom, I'll have to meet you up. I'll have to come meet you up in the driveway. I've never seen or never heard a cat bark, nor never heard of a cat killing any kids. No, the cat's just sitting there on the couch plotting your death.
Yeah, exactly. All right, thanks, Patty.
Thanks, Tom. All the best. All right,
bye.
Bye. Hey, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 3. Joe, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Hiya, Joe.
Good. I suppose you take your little puppy out for a ride in car, do you?
Had him out yesterday. We've moved from a little dog seat to trying the kennel because he doesn't like the car. So we put a kennel in the back to see if that maybe makes it a little bit more pleasant for him.
Oh, you don't like riding in cars?
He doesn't.
No?
No.
But the little puppy you got, do he grow any bigger?
No, he's fully grown now, which is not very big. He's only a little fart. I think he's probably 12, 13 pounds. Big enough for me.
That's big enough for dogs. And Patty,
wow.
Did you ever hear the old saying about the dog?
What's that?
A barking dog will never hurt you.
Just blow out your eardrums.
Yeah, that's what the old folks used to say. Hey, a barking dog will never hurt you.
I don't think I've ever heard that.
No?
No.
Well, that's what the old people used to say back in the time, eh?
Very well.
Yeah, these are the quiet ones you got to watch out for. One slides at you.
All right.
Patty, I'm calling them out. There must be a scam by about $1,551.
We're trying to get more information. It was in the budget, and for some reason, it's not active. I have no idea what's going on, but we're trying to figure it out.
Is there any way you can find out if we're going to get it?
Short answer is yes. I'll find out.
You'll find out, will you?
I will.
And when you find out, say, if you find out today here Monday, if we're going to get it announced over the radio, will you?
100% I will.
Yes.
No problem, Joe.
Yeah. What's the weather like in there today?
Freezing cold. It's relatively calm,
Yeah.
but it's chilly.
To the sunny out there, but it's cold.
Well, I'm glad to hear. We got some sunshine too. The sky is relatively blue and clear, but it is pretty frosty. Not unlike the last couple of days. The last 2 days were extremely cold. It feels a little bit warmer today.
Yeah. I'm sitting outside my window in the front room now, and the sun is beaming in. Your arms got turned off the heater in the front room.
Well, you enjoy the sunshine. I'll get the information, and I appreciate your time. Have a nice weekend.
Yes, now when you find out, Paddy, announce it over the radio.
Yeah,
So
I will.
so I would have to phone you back.
No problem, Tal.
Okay, Paddy?
Okay, man. All the best.
Yeah, have a good day.
You too, Joe. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
And just a quick dog-related tale. So we had just moved back from Alberta. And, I mean, this is like a week after we got home from Alberta. We were going for a walk up on Beachy Cove Hill. So up behind Nanny's property down in the cove, and we're making our way up the path, and here comes this big animal around the corner, not on a leash, and it was a big husky type of dog. But of course, I had just come back from Alberta where we used to encounter wolves. So here's Nicholas, like 3 years old, Jack, a baby, up in the carrier on Lynn's back, and here's me telling him, you got to go back down the path. I thought I was going to have to fight the wolf. And then here comes the owners of the dog around the corner, and I thought I was going to meet my maker by fighting the wolf, even though wolves attacking and killing humans is very, very, very rare. But I forgot there was no wolves there. But I thought, oh, my God, Lynn, take the kids. And here I am with the dukes up. Come on, come on. Yeah, here comes the owners of the husky. Let's take a break. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 2. Bill, you're on the air.
Yes, Patty, how are you?
Not too bad, you?
Not too bad, boy. I just got to fix the phone here. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah. Well, Happy New Year first. I'd like to say that.
Same to you.
I haven't been talking to you in a while. But I want to talk about road safety.
Go ahead.
Okay, I know I was looking. Transport Canada publishes casualty rates for all across Canada, and they do a comparison among the 10 provinces and the territories. But I found I was kind of shocked yesterday when I was looking this information up because I have a particular interest in this, and we are the second highest in Canada for fatalities on our roadways, and it's there's a comparison, right? So we're the second highest, and then there's 6 other categories, and we rank third highest in the other 2, and 4th highest in 3. So we're way up there. This is, and I think. So I think that's worth noting.
Absolutely.
Hello? Yeah, okay. So now I'd like to talk also about, a lot of times you hear when people crash and you look on these on the sites, and there's one particular news service, I think it's called Newfoundland Bulletin, and they're on it's a local site, and they keep track of whenever an accident happens, in around the area, around the metro area, and I was looking, and I did a compilation since the beginning of October up until say the 3rd week of January, and I focused on the Outer Ring Road. Okay, and there was that road during that time, that 114 days, I think it was, the boat lanes were shut down 6 times. There was 16 collision events, and some of those are multiple car collisions. And I think there was noted in those reports that 16 people were taken to hospital by ambulance. And in one of those instances, it's publicly recorded on those sites that a young man was paralyzed. Okay. So anyway, so a lot of times when when you read these, people post comments on these reports and on the different accidents that happens, a lot of people are saying, well, people are going too fast, and they kind of blame the victim, and they put it off on the individual responsibility. But I think there's in particular on the Outer Ring Road, you can't really blame a person all the time because there's a pressure on that highway to go, and I'm sure it's on other highways too. There's a pressure to go with the flow, right? Go with the flow. So if the traffic is moving at 105 or 110 or 115, then the pressure is to keep up, and it all goes back to and so I think what it is it's a misinterpretation of the Highway Traffic Act 111, and people always complain about like someone's going too slow or something like that, and Highway 111 says a driver shall not drive at a slow rate of speed as to impede or block normal and reasonable movement of traffic. Okay, so what I'm saying is, if traffic is moving at 110 or 15 or 115, that may be the normal, but it also says that normal and reasonable. Now that's not reasonable according to the Highway Traffic Act. So the Highway Traffic Act says that you're supposed to go by the regulatory sign that's posted next to the highway, and Outer Ring Road, that regulatory sign says 100, no more than 100. And actually, imprudent driving, Highway Traffic Act 110 says you could be fined for going even 1 to 10 the first part 1 to 10 kilometers over that limit. So I don't think it's all up to individuals. There's a lot of pressure to go fast. And the other thing that I found in those statistics that I picked out from and I analyzed from the Newfoundland Bulletin is that during that period of 114 days on the Outer Ring Road, from October 1st up till, we'll say, yesterday, there was 6 rollovers, okay? Now, you just don't roll over because of it could be a slippery patch or something, but you got to be going pretty quick.
It's hard to roll a car over.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes, for sure, unless you're Charles at Last or something, But driving on the highway at above the reasonable amount of speed. I mean, the reasonable amount of speed is what the highway engineer, the highway designer, he said that road says 100, and that's in ideal conditions. But
that's another important point. It's all about conditions for me. On a nice, clear, dry day like today at this moment. Now, I don't know what the conditions are like this morning or right now, because when I drove in, it was pretty slippery because it was really cold and you could see the black ice, and sometimes you can't see it. But it's driving the conditions is one of the key points. Is that, just because the sign says it's 100 doesn't mean it's a good idea to go 100 when the weather is poor.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So like I guess to wrap it up is that these statistics, okay, these are for the province. These are like our province, and like I said, we rank second in the country, second highest in number of fatalities, and it's done by vehicle kilometers. It's per billion vehicle kilometers is the number, and I think that that Outer Ring Road has 40,000 vehicles per day. That's a reported number, okay? And I think that the driving on that is a big portion of our statistics, okay? And I think also that this whole idea that it's a keep right except to pass dynamic, or that's what's accepted, or that's what's been said by our authorities, I think they're mistaken. I think the overhead signage tells us how we're supposed to operate on that road, and it tells us which lanes to use depending on where you're going. And if you're going through, some people call it express, so that doesn't mean go fast, but if you're going through, or if you're not exiting, or if your interchange is not up
immediately soon that you should be out in the left lane, according to the signage on the highway.
Right.
Okay?
All right, Bill. Appreciate the time. Thanks for calling.
Okay, have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Have a weekend, too.
Yeah, thanks. You too. Let's see here. Time for the news, but, again, it happens every show, and I understand why. Why no mention of this? Why no mention of that? And this is about the travel numbers that are way down in the United States. And, again, it's your money. If you want to go to the States, fill your boots. But here's a strange one, and I don't know how it's going to work, but there's 3 hotels in Las Vegas. I mean, you can't even describe what Las Vegas is like. You actually have to go there to experience it. It's the wildest place in the world. And while it's not always good. So there's 3 hotels now that they're accepting the Canadian dollar at equivalent value to the American dollar. The currency exchange today is about 73 cents. So let me get this straight. If I walk in with $1,000 cash Canadian in my hand, and I get $1,000 worth of American chips, what's stopping me from cashing in that money to get American dollars back and repeat and rinse and repeat and rinse? I mean, you can spend an afternoon at the Bellagio and your $1,000 Canadian can turn into how much? I mean, there must be some safeguards.
I know where you're going to be if you go on vacation next. It's going to be in Vegas, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not going to Vegas. Going to Montreal. Let's get a break in. When we come back after the newscast, plenty of time left for you. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 1. Hello, Otto. You're on the air.
Hello, Paddy.
Best kind today. Thanks. How about you?
Oh, good. Someday, Paddy.
Yeah, it looks nice out there. I'm looking forward to getting out for a walk.
Yeah, this snow clearing racket, I think it's only a joke. My son went to Bay Roberts. He said the truck wanted to run road 3 times. One clear. Never seen her saw a truck till they got to Bay Roberts.
Yeah.
That woman phoned in there from Sunnyside. She couldn't get up the hill there. In 1970, I was on the sand truck shoveling sand. We had no spreader, right? We start Sunnyside, Comagents, Arnold Cove Station, and Southern Harbor. And we had the road down to the pit. Was bare, no pavement then, it was gravel road, eh? But I heard Goobies got a foreman from Africa. What do we know about snow clearing?
From who?
From Africa.
Okay, I don't know what they might know or don't know.
What was I going to say? The mechanics from Clarabelle had to go into St. John's to they had to do mechanic work in St. John's, drive-in pickup. They never had enough mechanics to keep the trucks on the road. So what's going on?
Good question.
I mean, there's no money like now. I mean, back in the 70s, we had 3 8-hour shifts, Unreal. Eddie, have you got Barry Patton's phone number?
I'm sure I can find it for you pretty quick.
Yeah, he's the Minister of Transportation. Hey, me and Inge going to have a powwow, boy.
All right, let's see if his number is right here.
No brag but fact.
I've got his constituency office telephone number if you'd like it.
Yep.
So 709
Yep.
834
Yep.
6180.
6180.
You got it.
Yep. Well, when you come this way, Paddy?
I don't know. Probably not this winter. I don't think. We might be going out to Marble. We're thinking about it anyway, but that's going to be dependent on the conditions. And if we do, we'll pop in and say hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, buddy. Thanks, Otto.
Long to shake your hand.
Looking forward to it.
All right, buddy.
Thanks, Otto.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Just back to the email inbox one more time. Again, it's almost overwhelming how many dog-related emails I've gotten this week. Like, it's shocking. And, some of the circumstances that are being described are just maddening. And this bit about, law enforcement throwing their hands in the air that they can't do this, can't do that. Well, they can, is the short answer. So, for starters, I can't understand why anyone would even want to have a dog if they're not going to care for it. Like, I mean, that's the starting point or the jumping off point for me. You know, we don't deserve dogs. But, I mean, for someone who's just willing to let their dog perish out in the frigid temperatures this time of the year, I don't really know what to say about it. But keep the stories coming, and feel free to join us live on the air. You can protect your anonymity by just being caller online, whatever. All right. And another reference back to the email, and this is a different topic altogether. It's about the Board of Peace. This made-up entity that's not going to satisfy anything. I'm a little bit surprised, I suppose nothing should surprise me anymore, that we are getting emails saying that it's a mistake for the Prime Minister not to have immediately accepted a seat on the board. Boy, I'll just politely disagree in full. I don't know why we'd want anything to do with it. I mean, just think about it. Think about the countries that have said yes. Think about the leaders that are actually part of it. And, you know, so the reference was that, well, at least we'd have a seat at the table. But a seat at the table with the despots and dictators and thugs that are part of it just doesn't sound like a place that I think any of the G7 leaders want to be. And none of them are. And so as a result, the President has rescinded the invitation. Okay, fine. And it's also about the whole $1 billion bit. All right, so not surprisingly, when asked about it, and this particular Vladimir Putin's $1 billion, you know where that $1 billion is coming from? The president is unfreezing seized Russian assets, as opposed to so many countries who are using those frozen assets, like we are in Canada, to send it to Ukraine. He's actually giving it back to Putin to pay his $1 billion to sit at the table. It's remarkable things that are going on. So I don't know why anybody actually thinks it's a really good idea to have anything to do with that particular board of peace. They can't even tell us what the money's going to be used for. So I think we have avoided a self-inflicted wound, personally. And maybe this is some sort of reference to United States politics as well. But we've got lots of our, brothers and sisters living in Alberta. We all know it to be true. And I spent a decade in Alberta. We had a really great life there. And you hear the conversation. Now, maybe it's just the voices that are so loud that get amplified and get a lot of attention. And this is what's likely going to be a referendum on seceding from Canada this year, which is really terrible. And I mean, I hope it doesn't happen. And the polls are pretty hopeful in that it probably will not come to pass, but there's a chance, I suppose. But here's where it gets complicated. It's not because I say so or I think this is happening, but the folks who are leading the charge, they have said quite clearly that they're getting plenty of support politically and financially from the United States. Of course it would be in the United States' interest for that sort of chaos and upheaval in this country, especially when we talk about the province of Alberta. And so many of those folks who are leading the separatist charge, they openly talk about willing and wanting to become part of the United States. I don't know how anybody sees what's going on down there and says, oh yeah, give me some of that. But that American influence, how are we not viewing that as problematic? Like Jeffrey Rath, one of the key voices in that movement, has talked about repeated visits and approval and support from the State Department. I mean, I don't even know why people in the country don't think that that's a problem. Foreign interference, we had a full public inquiry, a judicial inquiry about political interference from bad actors elsewhere. Now, the vast majority of that, of course, was associated with the elections. Canadian business groups talk about foreign interference into industry. And yes, influencing the chaotic realities of the possibility for a separation referendum. Don't know why we're just turning a blind eye to that. Yes, the Chinese interference and the Russians and whoever else, but that includes the Americans at this moment in time. I have no beef with Americans. None. I have no reason to. I think most share a beef with what we actually see going on. But with American influence, politically, societally, social media, financially, for leading that movement or being a significant part of the separation movement, I think that's just a problem into the future. Because just think about it. Supposing you are on side with what they're trying to do, some people are trying to accomplish in Alberta. If we're going to turn a blind eye to any foreign country being so intimately involved in domestic issues like that, then before long, governments will change, the shoe will be on the other foot, and if American influence or Russian influence or Chinese influence is against something that you believe in, then you'll deem it a problem. As opposed to us all agreeing that regardless of the issue, let's keep that type of foreign interference out. Because governments will change, policies will change. You'll be interested in one thing or another into the future, and if another country is influencing against your wants, your wishes, your best needs, then you're going to be mad. So let's just try to collectively understand that when things change, and they will, let's all view it as a problem, because it is a problem. Let's get a break in. When we come back, plenty of show left for you. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. I just had a little scroll there while we were listening to the break, and there's plenty of hyperventilating about, Canadian military entertaining exercises. I mean, it's pretty normal course of action for the Canadian military to be involved in exercises, whether it be here or the Canadian Air Force over on Greenland at this very moment in time. But it's the thought and people going on and on about whether or not the Americans invade. I mean, that's not a thing, right? Fingers crossed. The war doesn't get even further down the bonkers road, and it is a possibility, but it's not. But I read so much of it, and I really don't quite get it. Plenty talk about road work, plenty talk about snow management or winter management on the roads. And I've been asked this many, many times, it's generally from the same people, as if you're talking road work, how come you won't continue to talk about the possibility for a fixed link? And I get branded as anti-fixed link. No, I'm kind of just pro-info, right? So let's talk about it if you think it's an important topic. Now, the then Liberal government did say they were going to have a further look at it. Between the federal government and the provincial government, they ponied up $500,000 to further the evaluation, the study as to whether or not the fixed link is a good idea. We have plenty of information on this, right? So let's go back in 2004 when Hatch did a study about the possibility for a fixed link and what it would look like. Then Hatch came back in 2018 and updated their work. Then a company called Arup came in and did the work as well. So and the Arup work is maybe 3 or 4 years old at this point, so we'll have to adjust the monies that we're talking about at that time. At one point, Hatch said the link would cost somewhere around $1.675 billion. Arup came in and did their most recent work, and the cost ballooned to $4.8 billion, and that's $4.8 billion of 3-4 years ago. So that number is even bigger today. And like most things, if it was ever going to be a good idea and to be executed, then was the time. And remember, the federal Liberal government, not only with that $500,000, they put it in the hands of Canada's Infrastructure Bank, which has been generally a deeply flawed outfit or organization. So that $4.8 billion, even just factoring in inflation alone, obviously it's cleared $5 billion by now, and probably by a long margin. So is it something that even needs any more consideration? I mean, if the next play is to put forward an expression of interest and go to the companies that actually build these types of tunnels, it's not whether or not it can be done, it's whether or not should it be done. Even if you just look at the completion of Route 138 in the province of Quebec, which of course is mandatory for this to even make any semblance of sense, it's going to cost billions of dollars to complete Route 138. And that doesn't include the amenities required by the traveling public. So it's starting to add up to a pretty whopping big bill. Then I'm told by the same emailers, and fair enough if you want to talk about it, is we can do what they did on the Confederation Bridge and have a toll that's collected by the company that built it. The only difference there is just even how you get to the Labrador side of the fixed link, the tunnel, because the Confederation Bridge empties out in a certain proximity. I think it's, 300 or 400 kilometers to 1 million people, which is not the circumstance regarding the fixed link. So it's not anti, it's just whether or not we think it's a wise move to make. And the only way we're going to ever figure out whether or not it makes any sense is if the expression of interest goes to these engineering companies, whether it be all the tunnels that they built in Norway or anywhere else in this world, to let them tell us what's next and let them associate a cost. And then we can all try to figure out with the expected traffic volume, of which Arup figures that it'll be far less than what Hatch had said. The 2018 report from Hatch estimated the tunnel would serve 162,000 passenger vehicles per year, 244,000 commercial vehicles per year. Arup came in after they did the work after Hatch, and they estimated only 118,000 passenger vehicles and only 27,200 commercial vehicles per year. So when you add all that up, it looks like an annual shortfall to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. And I know road work and tunnels and bridges aren't supposed to be, in general terms, money-making entities, but purposely setting up a money-losing entity is got to be part of the conversation, I think, right? And then let's just say the volume is even what Hatch thought, which was huge numbers. For folks living on the Great Northern Peninsula, they'd be the first to tell you. If that type of traffic volume would be passing down the GNP, the amount of upgrading to the roadwork network on the Great Northern Peninsula would be extensive and required to be extensive. So, we can throw it around if you're so inclined, but, with all the looking and toing and froing and scratching our heads and thinking about it, if the Canada Infrastructure Bank is interested in it at all, and the emailer goes on to say, how could this not constitute a nation-building project and belong at the Major Projects Office? Fair enough. I think if we were picking and choosing what projects here we'd like to see maybe added to that list, I think that there's others that would come in front of this particular link from Labrador to the island, whether that be Bay du Nord, because just this week Minister Parrott was on the programme. He's the Minister of Mines and Energy, and he said that he fully expects that the federal government can play a role in Bay du Nord's final investment decision, insofar as the hundreds of millions of dollars that are going to have to be collected because it's outside our economic and protective zone. And maybe, just maybe, that would be a nudge in the right direction, so to speak, for Equinor to say, okay, because full well, Equinor doesn't want to pay it. And it's quite likely they've already said, no, we're not doing that. Because Canada signed on. Equinor didn't sign on. Canada signed on. This province didn't sign on to Article 82 of the United Nations Law of the Sea. So, yeah. And then I think if you also add in, beyond that particular project, I don't know what else would be priorities here. And you can pick one and bring it forward. And on that front, I get some people who are really pro-wind, and they have their own reasons for why they think that's a good play here. And there's certainly a need for a mixed power source for all of the most robust and reliable grids. So the John Risley play, it got very little attention. I think most people just thought, it's probably not a very good idea, and nor does it sound like it's really a possible idea. And his play was massive. It gave us a price tag of somewhere around $75 billion, which is a lot of money. And for context, so he's talking about an Atlantic Canadian clean grid. And even phase one inside his proposal would see the need for 5 gigawatts to be produced onshore wind from this province and 5 gigawatts of offshore wind off of Nova Scotia. That's just phase one. For context, his current proposal on the Port-au-Port Peninsula is for 150 of these massive wind turbines, which would collectively only produce about 1 gigawatt of power. So that requires the other proponents who are talking about green hydrogen, which seems to be, other than North Atlantic, seems to be dead at this moment in time. That would require all of them to get outside to be able to create that 5 gigawatts. So that said, and we've asked the government this particular question, the Crown land leases that were given to the proponents of the green hydrogen play, they were project specific. Risley's new proposal is not that. Because it's not just putting the turbines up on one part of the island or another. It's also about the interconnectivity required in transmission, which changes everything regarding environmental assessments and the release from environmental impact assessments. So maybe the folks who are still on side of it, it kind of feels like that might be a flight of fancy. It doesn't really feel like a real thing. So you want to bring forward your thoughts on it, please do. Got some reaction to Jamie, the transport truck driver who joined us earlier, 30-year veteran. Talk about what he sees insofar as behavior of the motoring public. And I was a little bit surprised when I looked around at some of the numbers associated with tractor-trailer involved collisions on the highways. I didn't think it'd be as extreme as was described by the OPP, the Ontario Police Force. They say quite clearly, their examination said that 86% of the collisions involving transport trucks was the fault of the passenger vehicle, whether it be the inopportune times to pass, whether it be following too closely, all the obvious things that you can think about. So it went from that to enforcement. Nothing slows you down quite like a squad car, and everyone knows that to be true. And sometimes when you hear people say that, well, I traveled from here to there and I never saw one cop car, it doesn't mean they weren't out there. It just means that you didn't quite see one. And I understand that in full. But a bit of individual responsibility probably plays a pretty active role here, too, when you get behind the wheel and don't lose your mind. Something happens in some people's heads when they get behind the wheel. All of a sudden, they're invincible. Maybe because of the size of their vehicle or their all-wheel drive or their four-wheel drive or what have you. But that's not going to help you stop, put it that way. Which leads me to be in the minority. And I'm going to stick with being in this particular minority. I'm 100% behind the speed cameras. I am. I just think anything that gives us an opportunity to slow people down is a good idea. Speed is the number one cause. I suppose if you add into it being inattentive behind the wheel or distracted by your cell phone, but speed is the biggest problem as far as I can tell. So speed cameras, bring them on. The same opposition points are made is that, it's more Big Brother. It's more of a traffic calming measure than it is with government trying to collect any data that they don't already have. They already have your license plate number. They already have your VIN number. It's something that's already been collected when you purchased and registered your car and insured your car. So then it's, what happens if it's not me driving? Well, that's between you and the person you loan the vehicle to. Like if you know that on Friday, the 23rd of January in 2026, so-and-so was driving your vehicle because you loaned it to them, you get a ticket in the mail for that date, well, then take it up with the person you loaned the car to. I guess there's ways around it. And then it's no one's going to pay the fine. That's probably true. There'll be plenty of people that don't pay the fine, which is why it's been bandied about forever and a day. Is what do we do with people who don't pay fines? And the tens of millions of dollars that are outstanding are not all Highway Traffic Act tickets. There's all kinds of things. Fines have been brought forward regarding contraband tobacco and other matters. So the thought was, we'll get you to do some community service. I don't mind that idea either. Whether it be picking up the trash in the spring or cleaning off the graffiti or whatever else comes to pass, I kind of think that's a good idea too. All right, 11:30 news coming up. When we go back, still a couple of segments left for you. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Just to read a sentence out of a most recent email. And this is about the Board of Peace or whatever. As far as Russia getting money to be on the Board of Peace, Canada just made a deal with China, who is now propping up the Russian war machine. We have to tell all the story, and we have been telling all the story. Going to bed with China is not ideal by any means. All right. So people are accurate in saying that at one point the Prime Minister said China was our biggest threat and then expanded trade with China. China makes up our second largest importer of Canadian oil, number one, and that is, of course, achieved with twinning the Trans Mountain Pipeline. But the trade deal doesn't mean we've got in bed with anybody, though, right? And let's not be kidding ourselves. We've been trading with China for decades. You go to a store or look around your home about how many things you already have that are made in China. It's pretty extensive. So, I guess the worry depends on where you are in the province or in the country. If you're Ontario, there's auto sector concerns. And I get that. And, yesterday, Premier Ford calling about a boycott for Canadians buying these Chinese-made electric vehicles, which were going to be certainly at a more attractive price point. But also, if people want me to tell the whole story, which we try to do here, the security concern for individuals is real, and we have to understand it. Is there a way for the data collected in these Chinese vehicles, the more personal stuff, to be kept and stored here versus relayed right back to China? And some of those things are about your fingerprints and personal information, like they can scrape your phone through the Bluetooth operation. They can take biometric scans of you. Those things do indeed pose a problem. I don't think anybody's arguing that point, but trade with China, even there's a couple of things that I'm not necessarily understanding in full. Like one of the potential problem areas is with the beef from Canada. So they're talking about going back to prior to 2021, where we were selling plenty of beef in China, and then there was bans put in place. But that's now been reopened as part of this Chinese-related agreement in principle deal. So the concern I think some people in the country have is if we're told some of the skyrocketing beef prices has been associated with the low numbers of the herds, then what's next? Does that mean we're going to see increased price? Because it'll be basically an auction market. If Chinese refineries are willing to pay more for oil, then they're probably going to get more oil if we have the capacity to get it to them. If they're willing to pay more for Canadian beef, then we're going to be up against that so-called auction market for beef. Anyway, we'll try to fill in all of the moving parts there. I was going to say the man's name, but I'll leave that out. Let's go to line number one. Ed, you're on the air.
How you doing, Betty?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
Oh, not too bad. Just want to talk briefly about the Dominion down by the lake and where it's closed and all that. I don't know exactly what you're already got to get out in that, but I'm thinking that maybe a better suggestion than Loblaws was probably why not just turn it from a Dominion into an independent store like, for example, No Frills. And then everything stays the same when it comes to equipment and all that, and you just got to change the signage. And then everybody else benefits when they don't have to move out, really. That's an option or a suggestion anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly no reason why it can't become something like a no frills, but of course that would be strictly up to the company itself.
Yeah, because I mean, they'd be like, I mean, they do get the same type of products from the Dominion anyway, but I mean, then they don't have to worry about that, and everybody can, keep everything there, like the doctors and all that. So there is quite a few people upset about the whole thing anyway, and a solution would be better that way, or at least a simpler solution than anything else, and then they don't have to worry about it so much.
Yeah, if you look around at what companies are owned by the big three, say, for instance, because I guess the big five includes Walmart and Costco, but the Canadian grocery chains of Loblaw, Sobeys, and Metro, it's remarkable how many different companies or brands they actually own. Like No Frills is actually Loblaw's, right? And same thing with Dominion, same thing with the Royal Canadian Superstore, same thing with Shoppers Drug Mart, Value Mart. I can't think of any others off the top of my head, but there are others. I mean, Sobeys owns Safeway and IGA and Foodland and Lawton's and the Needs franchise of stores. Metro, not so popular around here, obviously, but they own Jean Coutu and Adonis and Super C. So those big three, man, they play some heavy-handed role in this grocery store world.
Well, I'm thinking of everybody else in the area when it comes to groceries, because, I mean, sooner or later, Pleasantville is going to be like a major spot when it comes to apartment complexes sooner or later anyway. Because there is arrangements and stuff on the go and plans on the go building more apartments, and that's an ideal spot for anybody to want to get groceries anyway, especially down in that area.
It's a good point. I mean, add to the proposed development in Pleasantville is add in the housing proposal on the old Ballyhaley site. So we're going to see a change in the face of the East End very, very quick, if and when all these big proposals come to pass, whether it be with vehicle traffic and otherwise. It's going to be nuts. It's already pretty congested in the East End. It's going to be bonkers when those things are built.
Yeah, I mean, some of the infrastructure down in Pleasantville got to be replaced anyway. It's been down there since the 1940s, but that's not really much of a big deal. Americans did a pretty good job building the stuff down there anyway, so it's not going to take too much to replace some of the pipes and that down there anyway, but that's not a big deal.
Yeah, Ballyhaley's a bit different. It's a pretty much start from scratch kind of stuff. There is some infrastructure, but nowhere near what's needed.
It used to be a farm years ago, right? A long time ago.
Yeah.
Ballyhaley was. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks very much, Bill, and hopefully maybe that message may get Loblaws and probably solve a lot of people's problems in one shot, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea where the company's head is. And someone made an interesting point to me. It's not only those who walk to shop at that particular Dominion, and it's going to close on the 8th of May, which leaves Cygnus and the doctor's offices and others looking for a new home. But apparently, and I haven't been there in quite a long time, apparently the escalator is broken. And so, as a result, everyone has to, one at a time, use the elevator with their big cart. And then people find that to be an aggravation. I think they lost some business because of that.
Yeah, another thing, too, that they don't have too many people in Newfoundland for fixing elevators and escalators and all that either. And the problem is with that, I know there's an apartment complex out in the east, or in the west end of St. John's. Their elevator hasn't been working literally for over 2 years.
Yep.
For some strange reason. And you have seniors that literally have not been out of their apartment in over 2 years and have to get stuff delivered to them.
Yeah.
And everybody got to walk up the stairs.
I never really fully understood the elevator repairman shortage issue here. And then there was a really prolonged strike for people who are working in that field. So there's plenty of elevators. Like, look at Memorial University. There's a couple over there that haven't been in operation for quite a long time. And that's a complicating factor for seniors and people with a disability.
Yeah, and I find that the fault on that particular part would say not be just the owners of the building itself, but actually probably, the provincial government, because they're supposed to be inspecting these things. And if it's not up to scratch, it has to be fixed and repaired. And for some reason, they're not fixing and repairing it for some reason, or getting their arse on the go, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. So does provincial government inspections include if it's not operational, they force you to fix it, or if it's not working properly, they force you to fix it?
That's the thing. It should be fixed, especially people when it comes to handicap stuff in every sense of the word, especially elderly. I mean, if you're talking about somebody in an apartment complex and they got to walk up 4 floors or more with groceries and a senior or anybody who has a physical handicap, that's not very good for anybody.
No, absolutely not. You're right.
And it should be mandated that if you don't fix it, we'll bring somebody in and charge you for it anyway, in order to get it done and repaired, to actually make sure people and the residents actually have a capability of getting in and out of the building, especially if there's a fire. If there's a fire, what are they going to do? Right?
Yeah.
Especially if somebody's handicapped or in a wheelchair.
Yeah, and I mean, we're always told to take the stairs if there's a fire, but you totally get your point. If you're old and have mobility issues or you're disabled, then your options are limited to get out of a building if you're not on the ground floor. I totally understand.
Yeah. So they should be, anybody who has a problem with an elevator should notify either the building management or whatever, and if they don't do anything about it, inform the government, because they're supposed to be in charge of inspections and stuff, and they can crack down on usually the people who are supposed to get it fixed, right?
Right, you are. Appreciate your time this morning, Ed. Thanks a lot.
Have a good day.
You too, pal.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I mean, if Loblaws were losing whatever money at the minute, and I don't know what the actual issue is financially speaking at that grocery store, if they were making the money they thought they should be making in that type of location, they'd probably keep it open. So, but how do they factor in? I mean, it's going to take a while for the Pleasantville development to take place. It's going to take a while for the Ballyhaley development. But that traffic that would be created in that part of the east end of the city, at some point that store would have been doing probably huge business. But they probably can't wait that long, because we're talking, 5-6 plus years before any of those things are actually built. And on that front, and it's a point that's made by a couple of specific people, is it's fine to talk about the mixed usage. And, you got the traditional detached single-family home and duplexes, triplexes, apartment buildings and condos and whatever else is going to be included. It's going to be even more and more tricky into the future. Given the cost to build per square foot right now, makes that affordability target pretty difficult to hit. Even if there's HST breaks for multi-unit buildings and all that type of stuff, if we're talking about the traditional definition of 30% of your income for your rent or your mortgage, then are we going to be able to build a significant number of these affordable units? Because you can build all the big mansions that you like, but there's more people looking for something they can actually afford, even though there's tons of money around St. John's in particular, is that affordability piece. I think if you speak to contractors in their quiet moments and off air, they'll tell you, we're not so sure we can do it. Right? So some of these things are going to have to be heavily subsidized. And it's one of the conversations I'm sure being entertained by Liberal members of Parliament, ministers and otherwise, is housing's got to be back on the federal radar. Whether it be freeing up federal land for homes to be built and other policies that have been brought forward. Like we have a supply issue, and yet they've made a couple of policy decisions that have ginned up the demand issue, like a tax break on new homes for first-time home buyers with a price tag of under $1 million. It makes it more attractive, and I wish I had that when I was a first-time home buyer, but we just increased demand when what we have is a supply problem. Housing and the government mindset has changed dramatically over the last number of decades. It went from a place to live to a way we measure the strength of the economy. Because one of the first things you hear is about housing starts, as to how active and how good the economy may or may not be. And it's the largest investment most of us will ever have in our life is the equity we find in our own home. But that tune and the move to condos away from rental units, you mishmash all that together, and here we are. Let's get our final break of the morning and the week in. When we come back, still a time left for you. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Just in reference to what Loblaws is going to do, and I have no earthly idea what they're going to do, but this one particular caller says she was at the Dominion today and speaking with an employee about the possibility for No Frills to come to town, and the employee told her that management told them that the store is too big to accommodate a No Frills. So that actually makes sense to me. The No Frills stores are nowhere near the size of the Dominions. I've got to try to find this email too. It was a pretty good point made about substitute teachers. Here it is. All right, I'll leave the person's name out of it, obviously. All right. So ask me to get a representative from the Department of Education or the NLTA or whoever to come on and explain this topic. The person goes on to say, I'm not sure if you're aware that substitute teachers, young and older, are being bumped by teachers who take a payout after 25 years. These teachers get their retirement payout, go to the top of the sublist, and get their top EI and don't lose a cent to their pensions. It's wrong on all levels, and young teachers coming out owing student loans are getting this mistreatment, and older substitute teachers who have always been career substitutes are being wronged. We've kind of nudged up against this topic a couple of times here on the show. I guess there's a bunch of different complicating factors there. Number one, if you ask Dale Lamb, the president at the NLTA, he says they straight up have a recruitment problem and then consequently a retention problem. And there's a variety of reasons as to why. They point to one being the level of and the severity of violence in schools, which is amazing that we've arrived at that moment in time. And also, I suppose if I got my 25 years in and I speak to former colleagues who are now retirees, and they've chosen get out at 25. I think your pension is, maxes out at 30 years, but I think it's still pretty significant at 25 years. And then knowing that during COVID, the government changed the rules insofar as how many days you could work before it impacted your pension, and they moved it all the way to 90 days. I think if you ask some of these retirees, they'll tell you that they can substitute not very often at all with their 25-year pension and earn as much as they did when they were working full-time by just doing a little bit of subbing throughout the course of the school year. So I'm unaware that the retired teacher is at the top of the sub list. I mean, that's not really how it's supposed to be set up. Now, some schools will absolutely, potentially, play favorites about who they bring in. Veteran teacher who maybe is familiar to the school, familiar to the staff, familiar to the admin, and they might get some calls where maybe in other circumstances they would go to the sub pool and just start making calls. My wife spent some time as a vice principal. It was one of the worst parts of her job. We'd get up in the morning, start getting ready for school. She'd check her email. This teacher's out, that teacher's out. It's on the phone. Hi, it's calling for Vanya. Are you able to come in? And it was a long, arduous exercise and tedious, and on top of the already pretty pressurized workload. So that's an interesting story that we'll chase regarding teachers. Here are very similar circumstance, well, not really the same, but it's about recruitment, about healthcare professionals. The question being asked by many is, if we've expanded seats at the medical school, expanded seats at the nursing school, and now some programs we aren't training as many people as we need, like medical technologists and other clinicians, is it the case that every single person sitting in every single one of those seats from the day they're admitted are in constant communication with the government about opportunities upon graduation? You can only hope that is the case. If we talk about the endless shortage or shortcomings in a variety of fields in healthcare, then you can only hope that that type of active engagement is ongoing. So they know there's an opportunity. And in addition to that, look, I know healthcare costs a lot of money, around $4 billion out of an almost $11 billion budget, huge line item. And then it's the concept of not getting offered a permanent full-time job. And apparently that happens more often than not. And then there's very select offers, like you can get permanent full-time to work in long-term care as opposed to work up on 4 North B at the Health Sciences. I'd like to see the savings to the government with offering part-time or casual work, because think about the contradiction. The government put forward a $3,000 bonus for nurses on the casual list to join the permanent full-time list. And very few took them up on it. Why? Because they had more flexibility on the casual list, insofar as time off and things go. So if we were making that offer then, but now we're not making 100% permanent full-time offers to graduates now, specifically in the nursing school, to save money. I get the need to save money, but boy, oh boy, the need to fill those however many hundred shortages we have in the registered nurses world, let alone nurse practitioners and licensed practical nurses, then I think we've got ourselves an issue. This email is regarding the concept that's been floated by governments about creating community service for folks who will not pay their fine or cannot pay their fine. And it's someone who's got a legal background. Leave names out once again. I believe the idea of community service was rejected as being too expensive to supervise and probably contrary to the Charter. If it was voluntary, there would probably be not enough uptake, as most people with high fine totals are there because they don't give a you-know-what. Motor vehicle registration does allow payment plans where you can get your license plate or your license back. No idea about efficacy. I have no idea how effective that might be either. Now, I've mentioned the community service when we were living in Alberta, but these were people who were prisoners. The chain gang would come up from Grand Prairie, I think it was, and they'd be cleaning alongside of the fairways on the golf course in Hinton and what have you, but they were prisoners. So by definition, a captive audience where that type of labor is available. And people will ask the same question about those in prison, for instance, at Her Majesty's Penitentiary, as to why they couldn't be part of some of those type of cleanup efforts. Short answer is they could. But to this gentleman's point about the expense and the supervision that would be required, because even if you talk about non-violent offenders who are behind bars and what they might be able to do, the whole conversation of idle hands as the devil's playground kind of stuff. So I guess the shorter answer is, for those who are incarcerated, they can play a role. For those who are not, community service, does it actually even follow the standards put forward by the Constitution? I don't know the answer, but it's an absolutely fair question. Terry poses the question regarding, I floated out the fixed link topic again here this morning. He says, How many people do you think will drive across the length and breadth of this province in the dead of winter? That's a very good question. I think a lot of people, unless you have to travel, are loath to take on highway travel during the winter months. Because even if it's okay today, you still have to come back, well, likely have to return to wherever you came from. So weather conditions change. I really don't like winter driving myself, and I especially don't like driving in the winter in the dark. So he's asking a good question. You know, the traffic volume as put forward by Hatch when compared to Arup, nowhere near, and really does make the exploding cost of that potential fixed link to be less than ideal into the future, but your thoughts are welcome. All right, let's check in on the Twitter before we run out of time and get to Sarah Strickland and your 12 p.m. news. What do we call it? VOCM today? VOCM at noon. I should know it. I work here. And I hear her say it every day. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. You can follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. And yes, we will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, Matt Barron, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. Talk Monday. Bye-bye.